Welcome to Have You Heard, where we talk about issues at the intersection of agriculture and engineering. Let's get started. Here are your hosts, Morgan Hayes and Josh Jackson.
Welcome. This is the Have You Heard podcast. This is episode 27. We are talking this morning about spring breeding, our plans and preparations for getting those bulls or AI started here for our spring herds. Before we get started, I'm Morgan Hayes. I'm an assistant professor in Biosystems and Ag Engineering here at the University of Kentucky, focusing on livestock facilities. And in my personal life, my husband and I farm in Boyle County, Kentucky. We farm about 500 acres. It's a commercial cattle and hay operation.
I'm Josh Jackson, assistant professor in Boston of agriculture engineering as well. And I focus primarily on precision livestock farming. And on my farm, we raise about 60 mama cows, registered Angus mama cows, and we also focus on hay production.
Okay, Josh. So before we get started on our topic of the day, which is the spring breeding, let's talk a little bit about what's been happening for the last week, because it's been a busy week on both our farms.
It has been a busy week. So we went ahead and we had another round of cutting hay. So we got some hay cut and we're working on getting it up right now. We also got a manure spreader back. So we actually started spreading a lot of manure as well. So clean out our feeding barn from last year and just other areas we had fed hay. Go ahead and clean that up as well. So feeding pads and feeding barn. And then also worked the spring herd. So the spring herd went through the chute, had a couple of calves, like they're starting to get some pink eye issues. So went ahead and treated everybody with some LA. And then we pretty much had them worked and went ahead while they were up there, went ahead and fly tagged all the spring herd.
Okay. Yeah, we did. The rest of our animals now have fly tags. So we had already done our spring herd, but our fall herd, our heifers, we separated out our heifers that are making weight for breeding here this spring, as well as our heifers that we're holding off until the fall. We have 4 that are still sitting in with the fall group, but they are probably heavy enough that they'll make weight for the spring. And if we can, we will cycle them into the spring group. But we're sort of hesitant on them. I know we talked a little bit before about this, but you have a slightly lower weight cutoff than we do. We usually hit 800 pounds as our sweet spot. If they're not 800, they don't get bred. And we have a number that are right in that 770 right now, a month out from breeding. So as long as they're making a pound a day, they'll hit the 800 mark. But we're sort of waiting to make sure that they really will hit that 800 mark. So that group may move around one more time. But, we move cattle all the time. Not a shock for us. It's on our farms. So we got a number of animals vaccinated, got fly tags in, got everything wormed because everything's out on pasture now and we can rotate them and do a better job worming. And then on top of that, we also had hay down. We got the hay baled yesterday. My family is hauling in today, although I'm here in the office with you. Hopefully your family's cranking away on hay while you're here in the office with me.
We had some challenges with bearings and whatnot, but hopefully at some point today we'll be done baling.
There you go. Yeah, because it does look like it is going to rain tonight, tomorrow, at some point in that time frame. It also looks like we might get a window just behind the rain tomorrow. Yep. So we'll see what's going to happen. It could be another very busy week.
Yep, and we have Friday potentially could cut hay. There would be a Friday to Sunday potential window. So that's another opportunity for possibly cutting hay.
Yeah, so there's lots going on, lots of animals, lots of things happening, lots of moving parts. This is the time of year when it's actually really crazy to talk about everything that's happening because there's constantly small repairs that are happening that have to happen in order to continue moving forward through hay season, making decisions about cattle. All of that is sort of happening continuously. And bush hogging, that's the other thing I didn't mention, but we are bush hogging a lot of our pastures. We know it's a little bit early, but we've had some pink eye issues. And so as a general precaution, we're clipping behind at this point some of our herds that are rotating. So whether or not that's the right decision, I don't know. With fuel prices, it's very hard to decide how much time you want to spend bush hogging, but you also can't spend too much time or money on pink eye. You have to make a decision at some point about which of the two is more important. And we'd rather not have eye issues, even if we have to spend a little more money on fuel and bush hog one extra time.
Yeah, we went ahead and bush hogged as well. Like we went out. I went ahead of my heifer group, so the next field they were supposed to rotate into. The cows, I said, nah, the next field they're rotating into, they should be fine. But any ones that are getting ready to rotate in, if it's 2 or 3 weeks out, I went ahead and took and clipped off the tops.
Yeah, we have a couple that we've clipped the tops ahead, but primarily right now we're focused on trying to stay behind them so that when they come out of a field, because we do a week rotation, there is always some taller stuff left. Just trying to knock that down early, try and keep a lot of seed heads out of there, keep it from getting dry and crunchy the next time they're in there where they're going to poke themselves on it. So, right or wrong, that's sort of where we're at. Is we're just trying to track behind the animals and get some bush done as well. But you have to do that around the hay windows, so it's a little tricky.
Yeah, a little tricky.
So all of that's what's happening on the farms right now. But our topic today was spring breeding. So you mentioned getting some vaccines done and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about the preparation work we've been doing and when we're planning to actually do our spring breeding.
So we got most of our cows, went through the vaccination process for the spring group, I think about a week or two ago, and then we'll try to get them bred later on this month. So we don't want any calves. So if they bred them now, they'd be early March potentially. We're actually looking for June 20th as our synchronization.
Okay.
Synchronization day. So we really, we got burned a couple years ago when we had that really bad, it was March snowstorm. We lost 3 calves in that snowstorm, and we just had, you get those winter calves, just get a little more challenges. If you get them into later March, I feel like we'll see better days potentially. So that was kind of our strategy or our thought process for when do we try to calve. So that's kind of one of our thoughts is when do we try to calve for our spring group. We're putting the bull in. It's later probably than a lot of other people. Probably a little later, but we're trying to get those March, April calves.
We have actually the same philosophy, which is very interesting because I would say that in general in Kentucky, most people aim for a late February, early March calf. Similar to you, we have been burned with weather. We recognize that the mud is really tough. By late March, early April, the ground is starting to get solid again. It's a lot safer to have calves on the ground. A lot less likely that they'll get stuck in the mud, especially if we're being conscientious about how we put hay out. So we, similar to you, we will put our bulls in March 15th or June 15th, not wanting any calves to come before March 15th. March 20th is going to start coming, in theory, the June 15th.
And really for us, it's just that factor, we get more calves born alive. We can take better management. As far as management is concerned, we need to perform better management, I guess, as far as getting them later calving.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think we have the same philosophy on that we're going to do better with the calves. I will say that I think our breeding rates are probably lower than people that try and breed in late May, beginning of June, in the sense that the heat in late June can be unbearable. Although, to be fair, we've had a couple 90-degree days here in May, so I'm not entirely sure if people that actually started earlier this year are going to come out that much ahead. We've had a couple heat waves already, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have more and they're not going to be worse in late June. And I hope that's not the case because it is really tough on the animals, especially on the bulls. Trying, semen quality will go down for sure with those heat waves, as well as the motivation to actually breed will go down. So we accept that we're probably going to have a slightly lower breeding rate because we do that later breeding, but it's still for us, if we can get the calves on the ground safely and alive and keep them alive until weaning, that is a win in our book.
And for us, when we do the AI, for us, we have that synchronized AI. It's about scheduling cows and trying to do it either early morning or late in the evening. Is kind of the goal, just so we can avoid that heat during the day. So we're queuing up a couple of animals. That's something we have to be conscientious of is how many can we do in the morning? And, are we going to be able to get them done before it gets really hot? Because, we get them up, they're getting stressed, they're going to be they're moving around. We want to try to get them done and out the door, probably by 10, maybe 11, 10:30 at the latest.
Yeah, and we just vaccinated a number of animals, and we actually very strategically did it on Friday last week because Friday last week the high was right around 70, and we knew that this group of animals was on a farm that we, and it's not a ideal setup.
Yep.
You would think that those of us that have ag engineering degrees and and do a lot of livestock handling facility designs would have perfect systems, but we do not. I mean, if we're being very honest, we don't. That is the reality of one, rented pieces of land, and two, farming and the costs of things. But
Cost is a practical concern.
it is a practical concern. So, but trying to find, it'd be very hard for you to synchronize now, anticipating weather that far in advance. We were just lucky that when we were looking at forecast, we were able to move our schedule around so that we were able to Friday.
Sometimes I do like to lie to myself a couple times. I'll go ask Matt Dixon. I was like, "What's the outlook? Is it supposed to be warm and dry, warm and cool?" And so I'll look at me. Oh yeah, it's supposed to be this. And so I do like to lie to myself sometimes.
Give yourself false hope.
False hope, yeah. It's like, oh, I asked Matt, so we should be good. You know.
It's always nice to have false hope, but sometimes it bites you in the butt, doesn't it?
And so, yeah, sometimes we have to, roll with the punches. So whenever we do synchronize, it is like, this is the ideal time, but it can be really cold. It can be really windy. You kind of, once the die has been cast, we pretty much have to roll with it. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that is sort of an interesting strategy. And so you do a full synchronization program. We don't actually synchronize, obviously, because we use a bull, and that would be really tough on the bull if they all came in together. We do use a feeding program where we do feed an MGA cube for a week prior to calving, just in case those cows that have calved more recently at the end of their calving windows haven't started cycling yet. That week of feeding MGA is supposed to start them cycling again, so it won't synchronize, but it will encourage a cycle.
Okay.
And so we've had very good luck with that. I think that is probably one of the reasons that we've had such strong calving rates in the first month of our 60-day window.
So you had like 70%. It was something like 70%.
I think it was over 70 this year, but pretty regularly we are above 2/3 in the first 30 days, which is really remarkably good for us, considering we have a natural service herd. But I do think that the feeding program, in combination with a generally good nutrition and mineral program, allows for that.
Yep.
So that's one thing that we are doing starting here. Probably when we have our next podcast, we will be starting feeding, because that would, starting on the 8th, would get us done on the 5th. Allow the bulls to go in.
Okay. Yeah, and we do occasionally, so I don't think we're going to use one this year. We've taken our spring herd numbers down enough where in some years we have our 1, maybe 2 rounds of AI and then put a bull out there, hope for the best, hope that he's able to clean up. But we do see lower conception rates just due to that heat that you talked about, even with, doing the AI and the bull. It's just hard. Hit that July, June, July. It's hard of them.
Yeah, I think that's true. And the other thing we'll be very intentional about is we will be intentional about having those animals in pastures with good shade, trying to keep them out of bodies of water for the most part, but making sure that they do have shade and areas where they can stay a little bit cooler, that they have good breeze in pastures. Anything we can do to try and mitigate some of that heat, we will do within practical reason.
Yeah, we had traditionally had a lot of trees along fence lines, and the ash trees all died, so it's made it a little more challenging. Even some of our big trees that were in the field were actually ash trees as well. So
yeah,
and they traditionally hadn't been a problem because they had enough spaces or enough trees to go between. But now it's kind of consolidated down to a couple oaks, and so we're having to move them a little more just so they don't tear up those root systems.
I think that is interesting. I've seen a few people recently planting trees in their pastures, which we traditionally haven't seen a lot of that. I mean, people have always sort of used the fence lines to grow trees, and then eventually they move the fence line out of the tree rather than clearing the trees out of the fence line. Either way, it's fine. Whatever floats your boat, I guess. But the trees and fence line was a strategy, and it works for the most part. But I've actually seen some people planting trees, and we have a couple spots that we're considering planting trees, intentionally planting trees that we think will grow quickly enough to give us shade in the near future, but also robust enough hardwoods that will last
for a number of years. And see those ornamental pears you drive down the road, and anytime there's a wind, they always fall down.
Yeah, well, those, and then I think now the Bradford pears are considered invasive, so definitely not what we're planting at this point for any number of reasons, both structural issues as well as some environmental ones. But yeah, definitely there are better trees and worse trees, and certainly no cherries, nothing that's going to be poisonous or dangerous to the animals if they eat them, but also something that's going to handle the pressure, especially if they congregate underneath them. Something that has a good deep root system that really handle that well. So, but even that will be a few years in the making. So we've been pretty intentional about setting up our rotation so that we do have.
Okay. And we traditionally have had trees, but like I said, we're having this new challenge with the emerald ash borer, so we'll have to roll with the punches on some of these.
Yeah, absolutely. And then make decisions down the road about how you're gonna.
And I think we'll probably go back in. We'll probably plant some oaks and just know that it's going to take a while. It will be our strategy, know that it's not going to be this year, maybe next year. It'll take some time.
Absolutely. All of that is to say that spring for us, I think spring breeding is more challenging. We certainly have lower conception rates. We accept that we've gone with the later season, but at the same time, that's what it is. It's the reality.
And for us with the AI stuff, it's just so much. There's so much other stuff going on. It's kind of hard to manage sometimes. We have to, consciously concentrate on. Okay, we have to take care of these animals. So at some point, we've done, heat observations, and so we eventually got away from that because in the spring it's especially hard because there's, we got to be cutting hay, we got to be bush hogging pastures, looking for pink eye. So there's so many other things we're trying to do. It's hard to keep track of, okay, well, we'll bring that cow. Well, has she come in heat yet? And so for us, it was synchronization was just the way to go.
Yeah, I would imagine tracking heat would be difficult. And then on top of it, sometimes their natural behaviors and cycles change with the temperature. So like if it's a cooler day, they're all out and grazing at 10 or 11 in the morning, all moving around. And then if it's a really hot day, they might already be up and under the shade by 9 a.m. And you might, if you went out to observe, you wouldn't necessarily go at the same time every day, making it really difficult.
So, we just from a management standpoint, we had to switch to synchronization.
That makes sense. I think that's practical. Hopefully, the bulls do their job. We haven't done our semen testing yet, which is, I know we're very late on that, but
their breeding soundness exam.
Yeah. And that breeding soundness exam is scheduled for next week. So we will have those results before the bulls do go out. We have enough bulls. We have one more bull than we need to have extra bull power. So if for some reason some animal fails or is marginal, we do have capacity within our group of bulls to still manage what we.
And really, you almost have to get. I don't see how anybody cannot get a breeding soundness exam because you have to know as soon as you put them out there, are they going to be working?
Yeah, I mean, the trick is they could test good today and then still fail in a week or two. But at the very least, we know when we put them out there, the chances are good that they are functional and capable of breeding our cows. The last thing we would want is to have an animal that doesn't breed. And some people only do it once a year, but we do it before each breeding season. That is absolutely our MO on our.
It makes sense. I think you have to know, and I think those are supposed to be good for six months, I believe, or
they say that, but I think at the same time, part of the quality of semen is totally related to the temperature.
Yep.
A couple weeks. Is it 6 weeks prior to?
6 weeks prior to a sale or something like that, you get them tested typically.
Yeah, because I think technically that 6 weeks is about how long it takes for that semen to
spermatogenesis. Yeah,
exactly. So if there is a disease or an issue, it will pop up about 6 weeks. Semen quality, which this is a very weird conversation right now, but it makes the whole breeding season, even though the test is good, and I think structurally you learn a lot about the animal by having it done. There's no guarantees that it's going to last, but I certainly would want to check every month if I had them going of animals.
Yep. And the thing is, if they're not good, you need to know right away so you can formulate an alternative strategy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or get a different bull, essentially.
Yeah, that was us in the fall. Was having to do that. We had the animals tested good, went out, and then had a structural issue and had to come out, and we had to buy a new bull in the middle of the breeding season, and that's very stressful.
Yep.
No one wants to be in that boat, and maybe that's why we should have done our test a couple weeks ago, so we wouldn't have been under some pressure. But because we have an extra bull already in our group, we feel a little bit more comfortable waiting on the breeding soundness exam.
Right. You got some flexibility, hopefully, built in this.
Hopefully we do, mainly because we haven't sold one of our older bulls yet. So, but that's about how spring breeding planning goes. The other thing I would say is we've also very intentionally, I mentioned that we looked at our heifers and our heifer weights. We have sorted our animals so that we have our animals that need calving ease bull in one group and animals that don't in another group, so that we can apply our bulls to the way we need to. So they're already sorted. So that, and then also those heifers are getting a little bit of feed right now just to keep them growing the way we want them to, knowing that they have sort of a long road between now, breeding, calving, and then rebreeding. So we'll give them a little bit of extra help along the way.
Yeah, our heifers are they're on pasture we think is a little better, higher quality, and then we'll move them all home probably about we'll put the cedars in on the other farm and then bring them home after once we yank the cedars out. We'll take them home.
Yeah.
So take them home and get bred, and then probably leave them there for a month, and then take them back to the other farm.
Okay.
To get a good rotation.
And how many heifers do you have that will be on the spring?
We actually have about 7, and so there were a couple of falls that I thought were a little small, but they were good looking falls. They were right on that borderline, and so we went ahead and said that they moved to the spring herd, and so we're just gonna take those, hopefully breed them, hopefully get them bred, and then get some spring calves out of them. Okay. Is our goal, and then we'll probably either sell them as bred heifers or sell them as cows, heifers with calves inside. That seems to be what people would want.
Yeah, I think people a lot of times don't necessarily want to calve out a heifer. They like to see a heifer with a calf on the ground because they know already that they've successfully given birth and that they're rearing a calf successfully, which is
reassuring. Take care of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Those are all really promising signs that someone's going to make a good cow.
And usually if you have that calf at side, we can there's more demand because they know you have another 9 years of productive life.
Yeah, they do have a long life. Yeah, we're sort of also, we have a couple bred cows that we're going to sell later this summer that are fall bred, but they do have to be young enough that someone can buy a cow.
Yes.
Because you want to see more years out of the cow if you're purchasing.
Yeah, you want more than 1 or 2 years and sell.
Exactly. So that's sort of how spring calving is shaping up, at least on our farms. It's a little bit chaotic. This is just a chaotic time, but we'll be ready.
Yep.
We're as ready as we can be. Hopefully the cows are ready. Hopefully the bulls are ready, and things will happen the way they're supposed to.
Hopefully it all goes well. So what's happening? What's your plan for this upcoming week?
The plan is to cut a little bit more hay. Ideally, if the window opens up, we may even start cutting late on Thursday, depending on how much rain comes through on Thursday. Otherwise, cutting Friday, try and pick it up on Sunday. It looks like Monday is also iffy on rain, so potentially we could haul in on Monday if we need to, but we'll be pushing that window as much as we can to try and get the hay in dry if we can. Aside from that, we have one bearing on the roller that needs to be replaced before we go back into the field. Just typical things that start to pop up once you start using equipment.
Yep.
And then aside from that, semen testing, breeding soundness exam for the bulls.
Yep.
And then we have to move around a couple steers and other things. We finally sold the rest of our calves out of the barn, so that frees up a bunch of areas. So we've got a little bit of moving a couple small groups of animals. But other than that, it should be a little bit lower key than last week.
I think for us, it really just depends on what that forecast does. When you're looking at, like you said, Friday, either we're cutting hay or we're bush hogging. We're cutting hay, bush hogging, or spreading manure. We're doing something with the tractors we have. So being dynamically planning around that, and then also thinking about, we got a couple of our other calves we held on to a little longer. We probably need to go ahead and try to get them moving out the door. And then just general repairs and maintenance. We ran hard past couple days, and so seems like we've had probably a short span here, but we've probably taken at least 4 tires off.
We had a flat tire on a tractor that last week just replaced.
Ours was like a couple hay trailers, everything it seemed like. So
some years it does feel like that. I think that's sort of an interesting phenomenon. It feels like some years you like spend your every last cent you earn at your job you spend replacing and patching and putting a tube in a tire, and you're just like, does it ever end?
Yeah.
When do I stop showing? It's bad. This is maybe a joke, Josh, for just you and I, and no one else cares. But it's bad when you go to the tire shop to go pick up a tire and your husband dropped it off and they just put it in the back of your car and let you leave because they know you'll be back in the next week to pay them because they know you're coming back again. Like, you can't get away from them.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, we always joked, it's like, yeah, you get up there and it almost seems like, the cheers, they had, Norm, you come and everybody recognizes you. So it's like,
they do recognize you when you go into the tire shop.
You go way too often. So it's good, but it's also like you wish you didn't have to spend all that money on the tires.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's what my husband's like, oh, so you didn't pay for the tire? I was like, they didn't even ask me to come in the store. They just threw it in the back and let me leave. But sometimes I guess if you got a newer person, maybe they wouldn't be quite that cavalier about it. But they know we'll be back because there's no way we'll make it another week or two without another tire going.
Yes. That's just the way it seems. I don't know why.
The more tires you have, the more tires you have to repair.
Yep.
And that's just the reality of having farm implements.
Hay wagons, everything.
So that's life on the farm, is that get to know your local tire dealer.
Yes, that's very true. Anyway, have a good one.
Thanks. Have a good, guys.
Have You Heard is a production of the University of Kentucky College of Agriculture, Food and Environment, along with the Department of Biosystems and Agricultural Engineering. Discover what's wildly possible at ca.uky.edu.